your two hosts, Carlos and Dylan.
What's up, Dylan? How you doing today? Thank you again for jumping on the show with me. SwampCast, Season 1, Episode 7 with my co-host, Dylan Olive from Sports Illustrated, Gator Sports Illustrated to be exact. Any key points from Billy Napier's presser, or is it just typical Billy speak that you guys got back from Billy? And any updates on Caleb Banks?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was too much to take away on Monday from what Napier had to say. I think, it was, the usual. They got to execute better. They were right there. Not a lot of fans liked it when he said, they were right there, that they're a couple plays away from being 3-0. But I think that he truly believes that. And I mean, I would say that's a good look for the team, because I believe that the locker room still believes that they were, a couple plays away from being 3-0. And, when they start not believing that, that's when you lose the locker room. That's when the season is, truly over. It's a long way back from down 1-2, but I do believe that they see the vision and they're sticking to their belief in themselves. I kind of agree with it. That was a very winnable game. It's 20-10, and your quarterback threw 5 interceptions. I think they didn't score. LSU didn't score in the second half other than a pick 6 and, a field goal. Or no, I don't think they even scored a field goal in the second half. It was just a pick 6. So, I see what he's saying. I think Florida is a couple of plays away from being, 3-0. Not a lot of people are going to want to hear that. And I think, from what I took away from it is just that's what they're preaching in the locker room, and that's what the locker room kind of has bought into. So I wouldn't say, he's lost the locker room yet. I think a lot of the players are obviously disappointed, but I think they still have confidence. For injury-wise, he talked a little about Caleb Banks. He was asked about Caleb Banks, and he said, wait till the Wednesday injury report. But since it's a non-conference, there's no injury report because it's non-conference. So, he got asked again because, they were like, oh, there's no injury report. And he basically said, don't expect him out there against Miami, which is pretty obvious. I mean, the guy broke his foot. For long term, he wouldn't go too far deep into it. I personally would not be expecting Caleb Banks back anytime soon. I mean, there's a possibility that we see him at the end of the year, but I don't think so. I mean, the kid is talented. The kid really, with how the season's going, has no reason to rush back, and I think with a future in the NFL already, I'm not sure if we see him again, but you never know with stuff like that. He might want to come back and try to prove he's a first-round pick, which I think he was on pace to be. So we'll see with that. I think it's a long-term thing. I think he'll be out for probably the whole season, but we don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see on that.
That means we have 2 key pieces pretty much gone for the entire season.
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing, Graham and Caleb.
Yeah, injuries have been tough on Florida every year. So it's really tough, but we'll see how they bounce back. I think, D tackles they have some guys there that kind of shown out. I know people aren't the biggest fan of Brendan Bett anymore after the USF incident. But he's a good ball player.
He is.
Impressive. We'll see if the young guy who was out last week, if he comes back. His name's escaping me right now.
I can't think of him either. Yeah,
Micah Burrow. Sorry.
Yeah, that one.
Forgot.
Yeah.
So we'll see with that position. I think injuries are tough, but Florida's been relatively healthy, and they're still 1-2. So you got to find a way at some point.
Graham Hall asked him if he thought about putting in other quarterbacks. I even suggested that during our pregame to the LSU game, and he's basically gun-ho on it's DJ or the highway, and he told Graham Hall, repeat your question, like being sarcastic about it, because Graham took it to the extreme. Mm-hmm. He asked about QB3 and QB4. I'm only saying you have a QB2 that has a similar skill set to QB1, but he's willing to die on that hill, willing to get fired on that hill for DJ. Even there's players coming out, one in support of DJ, ex-players, sorry, one in support of DJ and one not in support of DJ, claiming that the locker room is divided. Cleveland is in support of DJ. He posted a picture of his DJ Lagway jersey saying, "This is a game, things happen. Don't get too high or too low on DJ." Now Shannon Snell is saying the locker room is divided. Have you guys heard of any division within the locker room? Because he's saying that the kid is being hated on. We don't know that for sure, but he doesn't seem like he's a cocky kid.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, shout out my guy Graham Hall. I think people are dragging him a little too hard for that question. He admitted himself it wasn't perfectly worded. I think he kind of more meant, is it important for these guys like Aiden Warner and Harrison Bailey who have had practice snaps with the first team, all through camp? But people are gonna drag him on the internet regardless.
Yeah,
so
no, I'm just asking the question because it's out there and people want to know.
Yeah. But I mean, in regards to Lagway, I haven't heard anything about the locker room being against him. I mean, even someone posted something where Tramel Jones saved a TikTok that was Lagway, working at McDonald's, and people are trying to point that as oh, the team has turned on Lagway. What I see that as is his friend is going to use that TikTok in the locker room and say, "Lagway, look at how funny this." They're kids. Obviously, they're going to mess with each other. Obviously, they're going to have some fun with it. I don't think that anyone's necessarily turned on the locker room. I mean, it's not hard to assume that a quarterback, a 5-star quarterback, who we've known for the past 2 years, Billy Napier's job kind of relies on. It's not hard to assume that he gets a little bit of special treatment. And, it's tough when you throw 5 interceptions after you're already the guy that, everyone's bought into. So, I'm not going to sit here and say the locker room's against Lagway. I think that's far from the truth. I think, everyone that's played with Lagway respects Lagway. I think, everyone that actually has watched Lagway for a long time thinks that he's a great quarterback, that what we saw on Saturday was not him. That's not who he is. And, in regards to giving Tramel a chance, I still sit with, you're going to go as far as you can with DJ Lagway, or you're going to die with DJ Lagway. There's no giving up on DJ Lagway in this situation, in my opinion, because he is such a talented quarterback. He's shown it at the college level. I mean, true freshman last year was making some of the best throws in college football. He was a very good quarterback last year. No ifs, and or buts. So, it's tough. These are growing pains. I think they might be even a little more than growing pains when you throw 5 interceptions and they look like that. There was no, oh, this one, wasn't Lagway's fault necessarily. They were all pretty bad. But that being said, you ride and you die with DJ Lagway. I think you leave him out there. I think there can be clear questions about the development, that he's come out looking so rusty, and the plan this offseason. But there's no question in my mind that you don't stick him out there every game that he's healthy, because at the end of the day, he is the most talented quarterback on the roster. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the conference. It's just a matter of, can he, develop? Can he learn from these mistakes? And can he get back to what we saw from him last year?
I'm going to put you on the spot, and you're one of my close friends. But if we get blown out by Miami, just a hypothetical, is Billy Napier gone?
Yeah, it's tough for me. Yeah, I wish I knew what the school was thinking, at all times. I don't. I'm probably the furthest of all the beat writers in knowing that stuff. I'm new to the beat, so I'm working my way up. But, there's definitely a world where that does happen. I think, Florida, after Miami, they enter a bye. You need a bye to kind of work in your new coach. So I think if they don't make it look good, if there's clear evidence that Billy Napier is done, which I think 1-3 and not keeping it close does, I think, there's a very realistic possibility that we see that firing. I mean, that's probably the best case for an interim head coach is to get a week full of bye so you can work with your team. You can, get in there, get comfortable, and then you take on Texas and you try to, go from there. So I think, I'm not expecting a blowout necessarily. I think Florida has been a super talented team. I mean, something came out today where we have, it was a post. I forgot what exactly it said, but it was like, we performed better than the other team in all three of our games, and yet
Yeah,
we're
no,
one and
I
two.
agree. Agreed.
Statistically,
LSU's not a number 3 team in the country. I'm sorry. We gave that game away.
yeah, and I mean, I'd argue that Florida is good enough to hang with the number 3 team in the country. It's just they haven't put it out there fully. They haven't, executed, as Billy Napier would say. So it's really annoying because, as much as you hate that saying like, oh, we're right there, we could be 3-0. I mean, they should be at least 2-1, and that game was so winnable if they just had, structure. I mean, I'm not gonna come here. Everyone already is jumping on Napier, so I'm not gonna jump on him. But you'd like to assume if the team was more well coached, they'd be 3-0 right now. So I mean, it's annoying. I'm not expecting Miami to come and blow our doors out, but they've looked very good. They look like a really good team. They look like one of the best teams in the nation. So if this game ends and we're blown out by a rival, that's going to be, a new low, I think. And there's a real possibility that if that does happen, they just cut their ties immediately. And they hope that the interim coach can build something through the bye and maybe, save this season to the point where we're not ending it 2-10 per se, which, we saw last year. 2-10 is not the standard of a Florida football team.
Of course. My only fear with firing him is the portal. You said this on the pregame. The portal opens for the kids for 30 days.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
what will we have left if he gets fired?
That's the problem with, ever firing a coach. At the end of the day, is you're going to lose kids, especially now in this, world and landscape of college football, is you're going to lose, a lot of kids. I think, it's kind of misleading, the transfer portal opening, because they can't go. I believe you can only go and play at an FCS level if you transfer now. So it's not like we're going to see, DJ Lagway go transfer to LSU or Texas. He's gonna run out on the field versus us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's definitely tough. You're going to lose players when Billy Napier's fired. That's a fact. That's happened every time a coach has been fired. I think, he was a great recruiter, so it's gonna be bad because you're losing so much talent. This roster is so talented that it's really gonna hurt. But at the end of the day, if he's 1-2 with this roster right now, no matter how good the player is, I think it's worth it to cut ties with a coach. If he goes and he's 1-3, no matter how talented your roster is, if you're 1-3, there's really no salvaging that. So, I mean, it's going to hurt. I think, we see some players dip. I think, people will be surprised. I feel like there's a couple players that people will expect to leave that don't. I think there's a lot of, players bought into the Florida, school, the logo more than the coach.
Yeah.
But, it's still going to hurt. There's going to be guys, and it's always going to hurt, and it's going to hurt especially because this roster is one of the best in the nation, and yet we're 1-2. So, at the end of the day, it's kind of a pros and cons. And if you're 1-3 and just got blown out by Miami, I think the cons outweigh the pros of keeping him and possibly keeping some players that, you end up going 1-3 with anyways.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points that frustrates me, and probably people that graduated during my time from Florida got frustrated with Billy Napier's. We're almost there, because that's typical Ron Zook speak from back then. We just got to keep improving. We're almost there. And I mean, you could be a good recruiter, but not a good decision maker on the field.
Yeah, I
So
mean, definitely. And I think, you know, that wordplay worked last year because, you know, you were able to say, all right, you're in year 3. We saw improvement. You had a true freshman at quarterback. Next year is the year. Well, if you put it together next year, we understand. But this is the year. This is next year. And the fact that you're 1-2, I mean, that talk is not going to work anymore. The roster is far too talented to be right there. You have to be there with this roster. So I get, you know, everyone mad, and we're going to have to see. I mean, it's going to take a huge turnaround.
I think
So,
he's. Sorry to interrupt.
no, all good.
I think he's trying to be Nick Saban. Just he's too nice of a Nick Saban.
I mean, he worked under him, so it's probably, you know, he definitely has some Nick Saban, you know, qualities, I'm guessing, but I don't know. It's a tough thing, you know. In college football, you need a lot to go right to be good, and I think, you know, he has a lot of that going right, and then at the same time, you know, we're 1-2, and there's a lot going wrong. So it's a tough thing.
Now I'm going to ask you a Scott Strickland question because I see this a lot. Are Billy Napier and Scott Strickland a 2-for-1 deal, basically saying Billy's gone, Scott Strickland's gone? I've argued he's not gone because he just got an extension. I even posted on X, he's not gone because whether we like it or not, he hit on a natty for the basketball program. So whether he has to fire Billy doesn't hinge on his job because he's got a contract through 2035.
Yeah, I think there's almost a 100% guarantee that Scott Strickland is not gone if Billy Napier is gone. I think, honestly, the extension for Scott Strickland has made it easier for him to move on from Billy Napier. You know, last year, it kind of felt like, you got to remember, last year, it was before basketball, so Scott Strickland didn't have the national title coach, Todd Golden, to kind of, you know, add to his resume and say, look,
Correct.
You can't fire me, you know. And there was no, you know, president. There's still an interim president they just, you know, hired, who
Correct.
I think everyone kind of expects is going to be the official president. But, you know, last year there wasn't that. So I think, you know, last year's not this year. I think Scott has all the, you know, reason to fire Billy Napier if it comes to that. And I don't think he's gone in any world. Obviously, 3-year extension. You know, he just hired Todd Golden, who won a national championship. As much as, you know, everyone hates Scott Strickland on Twitter, he did have, you know, that huge hire. UF athletics has still, you know, been very good. Obviously, there's some sports that we wish they were better in, but, you know, there's still been some national titles here. There's still some great athletics. So I don't think they're a 2-for-1 deal at all. I actually think that Scott Strickland now feels safer firing Billy Napier because of that extension, because of Todd Golden. And I think that's why it's much more of a possibility now than it was last year, just because, you know, all signs point towards he can fire him and make the next hire, and no one will bat an eye, considering, you know, he just made a great hire in basketball and he's got that extension.
Yeah. One thing that now you brought up the interim president. I can't remember his name because he's brand new. I've heard rumors that he's not into athletics as previous presidents. Have you heard anything?
Yeah, I haven't focused too much on the interim president yet. I mean, I haven't heard too much. Obviously, you know, I think a lot of UF fans were sad when we didn't get the guy from Michigan.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he was super into, you know, athletics. So I think, you know, a lot of people feel let down. I personally, you know, don't know too much about it. I would say, you know, wait and see. I think a lot of people in, you know, Gators Twitter love to overvalue how much a school president is going to affect your programs. At the end of the day, you know, the football team is not going to be good or bad because the school president doesn't care about football. You know what I mean? Like, they want football to be good. That brings them money. So I
Exactly.
don't think there's too much to worry about there. We'll have to wait and see with him. So I'm not too sure about him.
Dylan, can you do me a favor and read off the PFF grades from the LSU game, please?
Yeah, so I wrote down a couple here. A couple, there wasn't too much shocking off the page. I don't think there was too many impressive, numbers. The one big one was Aiden Mizell, 88.7, led the
He
whole
should get
team.
the ball more.
Yeah, he didn't play too much for being one of the best players on the team. Admittingly, I didn't see him as one of our 4 best wide receivers, but, he looked really good Saturday. He was one of the only ones making plays out there, and I feel like DJ Lagway has that connection with him. So, I think he earned himself more playing time. We'll see. Austin Barber, 77.1, was the second highest offensive graded player. Bryce Lovett, shout out Bryce Lovett. He struggled a couple games here, but he earned a 71.5, which was the 3rd best offensive grade on the team. So that's good to see. One that I thought was, eye-catching, DJ Lagway earned a 64.4, which, is above average, especially for 5 interceptions. That's kind of crazy that he did that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that kind of goes into PFF grades, how much you want to take them serious. Sometimes, you kind of don't understand how these grades are made. On the defensive side, I think it was pretty obvious when you were watching that Miles Graham was the best, defensive player out there for either team, in my opinion. I mean, LSU has some great cornerbacks. That quarterback one is, an extremely good player, but Miles Graham, I think, is, so talented. He ended with a 80.8. George Gums, who's, just been consistent for us since he got to campus, 80.5. Important one, Brian Taylor Jr., he came over from JUCO last year. He didn't play much last year. With the D tackle opening up, he only played 15 snaps, but he earned an 80.2. I think we've seen him play a little more. He's been solid. Pup Howard was an interesting one for me because we know how good Pup Howard is. He's supposed to be our veteran presence in the linebacker room. He only played 10 snaps. He only played a little against USF. He only played 10 snaps here. That'll be an interesting, kind of see if they're just working him up. I think that's what's going on, but it's interesting to see. He ended with a 74.2. And then Dijon Johnson, he's been, a talented corner. He had the interception, 74.2. So those are the ones that kind of stuck out to me. Not too much jumped off the page for Florida, obviously, because, it wasn't really a good night for Florida. I mean, they kept it close. The defense looked amazing, but there wasn't any performances that you were like, wow, this guy is, all SEC because of this performance.
Do you expect Cromartie to get some more playing time? Because that kid's hustled to stop a touchdown, and he always hustles. I mean, I think he learned his lesson coming out of high school, being all cocky. He now seems humble. I'm trying to follow his mother because I'm trying to get some people on the show, and she posted that play that he's the only one that caught up to the, I don't know if it was a running back or a receiver, I can't recall right now.
Yeah, Caden Durham. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the running back. He stopped him from the touchdown. Shouldn't Cromartie get more playing time?
Because I mean, I don't think his playing time is too much of a concern considering he played 40 snaps, which was one of the most, he's in the starting rotation for cornerbacks. He started last game. But, I mean, he's been so impressive. I just wrote an article about him. I released it today, actually. So if you guys want to go check that out.
Go check out his work. And I'll probably drop another Cromartie video because I dropped one earlier during the summer saying that I expected a breakout season. And it kind of got some views. So I might drop one based on your article now that you said he wrote one on him because I'm just surprised there's a rotation. Why don't you leave the kids in? Same thing with our starting running back. He should stay in.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's more about keeping them fresh. But that being said, Cormani was, phenomenal. I felt like that on Saturday. I mean, you're talking about that play. That play stood out to me so much. The game is over. It's 20-10.
Yes.
LSU has the ball. especially, you can say, oh, well, we have 3 timeouts. The game's not technically over. The guy was breaking down the sidelines. He got the first down. The game was over. Cormani, 110% down the sideline, catches up. So, by the way, Caden Durham is no slow running back. He's one of the fastest players in the SEC. That guy ran, I think it was like a 10.5 in high school. I mean, he is extremely fast. Cormani hawked him down. It was super impressive. And, I talked to the coaches. I asked Billy Napier about him and that play specifically on Monday. And Napier mentioned, how much Cormani's grown and matured. And then we talked to George Gums about it. And George Gums said he's a totally different person. At first, George Gums basically summed it up. He said at first when he got there, everyone was kind of questioning him, as they should have. There was huge question marks about Cormani McClain. And then, he started showing up late to practices. He started needing them to get on him a bunch, and everyone started to say, okay, this might have been a mistake taking him on a team.
Correct.
And he said this January when they got back, Cormani McClain has been a completely different person. He's more vocal. He's, doing everything right. George Gums said he's good to have around now. Before there was question marks, but now he's good to have around. So I think that's one of the best stories of 2025 so far is Cormani McClain's kind of comeback, especially with how much the nation, looked down upon him, tried to act like he was a lost cause. No coaches even really wanted him out of the portal. It was like Florida took him on as sure, why not? It wasn't like Florida had to fend off a bunch of teams for him. So I think that's a huge, huge story and an awesome story. And yeah, I wrote it today, and I think he's just, on Saturday he showed the type of player he could be. Played 40 snaps, allowed no targets. He could be a lockdown corner. I think if he keeps up, staying on track and not letting himself beat himself, he could be in the NFL, and he could be a early NFL draft pick.
I agree. Is our season and our goals, meaning the Gators, I know that I say our because we're both alums, and I've got to take that bias out of me too. But is the Gator season and the goals over for this team? Looking down the stretch that we have Miami, bye. Then we have Texas A&M. Then we have Texas. Sorry. Then we have Texas A&M, and we cannot lose one more game in the fashion we've been losing them, because I think that USF game hurt us a lot. If it would have been in the LSU game, I think we're still in the top 15.
Yeah, it's really tough. And like you said, it's the way we've been losing these games. If we had beaten USF, which we should have beaten USF, if we just played good football, we beat USF. And then LSU, if you get a 20-10 result, or a 20-10 result, and DJ Lagway doesn't throw 5 interceptions, you're probably feeling pretty good. Being 2-1, you just took the number 3 team in the nation in their toughest environment, one of the toughest environments in college football. You take them down, you get them 20-10. I think you're feeling pretty good right now. Instead, it feels like the season's over. It feels like, you're 1-2. You lost an ugly one to USF that you should have won. And then you have, you keep it close against LSU, but you're not allowed to feel good about it because you threw 5 interceptions. The quarterback who everyone said we're going to go as far as DJ Lagway can take us ends up taking us to a loss with 5 interceptions. So I've talked so much about the talent. People might call me a Disney Gator, and I promise you, I'm not, one of those guys that is telling you it's all good, it's all good. But at the end of the day, I look at this roster, I see all the talent we have, and I refuse to believe that, it's over until it's over. You know what I mean? Even, it's hard to look at Billy Napier's tenure here and not believe it's not over. But at the same time, this roster is so good that, I can always see us backdooring a playoff spot somehow. You upset Miami. Like I said last week, you upset LSU, the season changes. you played, a good enough game to upset LSU, but also, ruined it with quarterback play that was unlike, your starting quarterback. So say you bounce back against Miami. Texas is a very winnable game now. They don't look as good as they should. Texas A&M, shout out to them. Big win against Notre Dame, but I wouldn't say, that's a unbeatable team. So there's always a shot, is what I'm trying to say. I think it's hard to be excited about this team anymore. When they're 1-2, they kind of have to be perfect to even get to where they were expected to go. But, with how talented they are, there's always a shot. And, I'm always going to believe in them a little bit because this roster is so good.
Yes, I agree. All right, guys, some quick stats. First downs, 23 and 10. Rushing yards, 79 yards on 27 attempts, 2.9 average, 96 yards on 25 attempts, 3.8 average. Passing yards, 287, 33 of 49, 5 interceptions, 220 yards, 15 for 27, 1 interception, and they were both +2. Total offense, 366 yards on 76 plays, average 4.8 yards per play, 316 yards on 52 plays, 6.1 per play. Turnovers, 5 interceptions lost, 0 fumbles. That's on the Florida Gators. 1 interception lost, 1 fumble lost. That's on the LSU Tigers. Penalties, 7 for 57, 7 for 68 for the Florida Gators. 7 for 57 was on LSU. Individual highlights. Time of possession, 37 minutes and 46 seconds, 22 minutes and 14 seconds. DJ Lagway was 33 of 49, as I already said, and that's basically all. Any final thoughts and any positive thoughts for Gator Nation and the Rolling with Carlos family going into week 4? And do we know the early spread for the Miami game?
Yeah, right now I believe it's around 8.5, 7.5 is
So
what
they're
I saw.
not expecting a blowout then.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm gonna leave you guys with, is the same thing I've been saying kind of this whole video, is Florida is so talented that you can never count them out of a game, and I don't think you can count them out of the year. I mean, you look at this roster, every position, I think, we can even say we've looked as good as we expected to look at every position. There's just been, the minor things coming from whether it's the coaching staff or, the decision making of one player, on Saturday. I think, I think we've looked good. I think that, everyone likes to say, oh, we lied about this, we lied about that. I would argue that we haven't lied about anyone, really. I mean, the defense looks as good as we expected. They talked about championship caliber. They held LSU to, realistically 13 points, even with them getting a bunch of turnovers and getting in scoring position. The offense obviously hasn't gotten it done, but Jaden Ball's looked elite. I would say the wide receivers, I mean, I know people are questioning J-Mike because he hasn't done much. I know people are questioning Eugene. I think they've looked good. I think it's more of, the scheme and what's really been going on with the struggles than anything. So just to leave you guys, I think this team is so talented that you can't give up on them. Obviously, it's easy to give up on them, but we'll see. I think there's still a shot in this season. And if not, there's a new day of Florida Gators football coming soon if we can't get it around. New coach, so I think as fans, you got to look at it as a win-win. Either you get back on track or, there's probably a new whole system here. So I think that's what I'll leave you guys with. And, yeah, just go Gators.
Guys, my positive note is we got to win one game at a time. Think of it as 0-0. Then we have a bye week. Then we can go ahead and beat Texas A&M. We're 2-0. Don't think it as we're 1-2. I know we all want to get rid of Billy because X is going crazy with please fire Billy, please fire Scott Strickland, even though we know Scott Strickland's not going anywhere. But stay positive. Like my co-host and friend said, if it's not Billy, it's someone else. We had that happen to us when it was Ron Zook. Then Urban Meyer came. A lot of you are dreaming that Urban Meyer is going to come, even in the capacity of an advisor for the next coach. Who knows? I can tell you this much. Urban Meyer's not going to be back on the field. So whoever's making that as part of one of the top 5 coaches you want back out Florida, Urban Meyer said it himself, he's not the type of coach to be in the NIL era. So please take him off your dream list, because Urban, the most he could do is be an advisor to the next coach. Where can they find your work before we get out of here?
Yeah, guys, go check it out on Gators on Sports Illustrated, Gators on SI, Florida Gators on SI, on the web. And, for my Twitter, you can see it down here, DylanOlive_UF. I post a lot of my articles there and some of my thoughts sometimes. So we appreciate you guys. Carlos, I appreciate you for having me on as always.
I always do too, my friend. I have much love for you and the wife.
Yes, sir. And let's hope this season turns around starting Saturday.
Guys, like always, stay positive, stay on your grind, and go Gators. Peace.